Good morning. We're grateful to have with us this morning the UU Pittsburgh Community Choir, comprised of members from a number of our greater Pittsburgh UU congregations and members of our own Sunnyhill Choir. They sang together at yesterday's UU Pittsburgh Assembly at First Unitarian in Shadyside, and today they've graciously taken their act on the road to be with us. And this first piece will be, Gaudeamus, will be directed by Chris Rust of First Unitarian.
Gaudeamus, 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 hodie. Gaudeamus, Gaudeamus, hodie.
Gaudeamus, 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 hodie, hodie.
Gaudeamus, 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 hodie. Gaudeamus, Gaudeamus, hodie. Gaudeamus, 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 hodie. Gaudeamus, hodie.
Gaudeamus, 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 hodie. Gaudeamus, Gaudeamus,
Good morning. Boy, that was really delightful. Welcome to the UU Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. We're delighted that you could join us for this service. Our mission at Sunnyhill is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Rebecca Senaway, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you're a newcomer or visitor to our congregation, please go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says New to Sunnyhill to receive more information about our congregation and to receive our weekly email newsletter. If you're joining us online today, please say hello or good morning in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. We'd like to hear from you and extend a welcome to you as well. For those of you here in person, a gentle reminder to please silence your cell phones and other electronic devices so we can enjoy this service without uninterrupted, or enjoy the service uninterrupted by buzzing or ringing. And if you have a restless infant or toddler and you need to take a place to take a break outside of the sanctuary, we do have an infant care room in the back corner that you can access from the hallway, and you can still hear and see the service. Today's service is titled Refuge and Resistance. In the wake of this week's elections, it's good to have this church as a place where we can draw strength from one another and where we can work to build resistance to the prevailing culture of fear and hatred in which we currently find ourselves. How might we continue to be a place of refuge and resistance? Our opening words were written by Joe Von Roo and Lynette Lowe. Welcome to this space, this sanctuary of peace where we come to not only create our best selves, but to also do the work of creating a beloved community. We come together today as individuals, much like individual pieces of glass or pottery. There are different shapes, sizes, and colors, all of which are broken with imperfect, jagged edges, but always beautiful. While our pieces may not always fit neatly together to create While our pieces might not always fit neatly together, it is within this sanctuary, guided by our values, that we gather together to create a beautiful mosaic. May the brokenness and beauty you find in one another create peace in this space and fill our hearts with love as we create worship together. Our chalice lighting this morning is in the form of a responsive reading. After each phrase I read, please respond by saying, "We light our chalice." For the passionate fire of justice, we light our chalice. For the sustaining warmth of community, we light our chalice. For the clarifying light of truth, we light our chalice. For the grace-fueled flame of love that will not let us go, we light our chalice.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, there I am. Please rise and by your spirit for our opening hymn, Gather the Spirit. The words are up on the board in front of you, up on the screens.
Good morning. If any children are present, I invite you to join me to get a closer listen to the story. Come on up. We're going to scooch back here a little bit. Come on back. Sure. Good morning, friends. Good morning. You gonna stand next to me? All right, and I've got Jack who's gonna be helping me tell this story today. This story is about Angus MacLean. Angus MacLean was a Universalist, a professor of religious education and dean at the theological school at St. Lawrence University. His influence included a call to address problems in the real world and to support the family as the prime source of religious education. He told a story about how once he was working with his father in their cellar. A cellar is sort of like a basement. It's a place where people store things like food and supplies and other things that we need to live every day. Many old Pittsburgh homes have a cellar, sometimes even a coal cellar. No, it's not a cold cellar. It's a coal cellar, like in my Mimi's house. I'm gonna take it from here.
All right. Angus's father was a farmer and a fisherman in Canada, and on this particular day, they were working in the cellar to check on their winter supply of potatoes and to get rid of any rotten potatoes that they might find there. When they were finished, they were going to set out some nets in the water to catch some fresh cod to eat. So Angus's father set Angus up out of the cellar to see about the wind, to see what direction it was blowing from. If it was blowing from one direction, it would be okay to set out their fish nets, and if it was coming from some other direction, they'd have to wait until later. So after Angus went up the stairs, his father called out to him from the cellar.
Is there a steady breeze?
Yes, Angus said, there was a steady breeze. In fact, it was a very strong breeze. Then his father said,
Now face it. Face the breeze so that the wind sings in both your ears. Then tell me where your nose points to.
Angus remembered those words and thought about them later. For him, these words meant that in order to come up with a plan to figure out what we're going to do, we have to first face whatever that it is coming my way, whether it's a stiff breeze or challenges of whatever kind.
In order to know how we are supposed to respond to these challenges, we need to first face them head on, with the wind singing in both of our ears. That's not always an easy thing to do, especially when the challenges that we're facing are so difficult and seem insurmountable. That's a big word, huh, friends? Insurmountable. Does anybody know what insurmountable means? What's your guess?
It sounds like ducks.
It sounds like ducks? Sounds like a duck. I don't think that's what it means. Jack, do you know what insurmountable means? No, you can't see the paper. What about our big kid friends? Drew or Ella, do you know what insurmountable means?
Really hard to overcome.
Exactly, like they keep building and building like a mountain of problem. Insurmountable. Nope, not look like a chicken either. So sometimes these problems can seem insurmountable. What'd you say? A rooster? No, just a really big problem. Right now in our country, we're facing a lot of challenges. None of them are ducks or chickens or roosters, though. And it seems like the voices of fear and hatred are always the loudest. But the first step in facing any challenges is to face it squarely, which is easier to do if we're not alone, but have the support of each other, like our friends and our family, and here, our church. So what I encourage all of us to do when we're in the middle of challenging times with insurmountable problems is to turn and face these challenges until we hear the wind singing in both of our ears. That way, we might know more about what we're facing, and together, figure out how to do whatever needs to be done. And with that, we will head to our religious education classes.
As you go, go in peace. Our love is with you always as you go, as you go. One more time. As you go, may joy surround you. As you go, go in peace. Know our love is with you always as you go, as you go. As most of you probably know, we're in the middle of our stewardship campaign, our annual pledge drive, this year for the 2023 year. And I want to thank everyone that's already made gifts. We have a goal of $449,000 in pledges this year. That's about 5% over what our total was last year. So far, we have raised $205,000 in pledges, so we're about 45 or 46% of the way there. Most of the people that have turned in pledges have stayed at the same level or increased. So people have been responding to that call that our stewardship chair, Mark Mortimer, made to make a 5 to 10% increase in your pledging if you can. And again, thank you to everyone who's responded so far. We've got about 2 more weeks to wrap this up. We're tracking pretty well, so if the rest of the people respond within these next couple of weeks, we're going to be in pretty good shape. And I just wanted to give you a few numbers in case you're wondering. That 449,000 seems like a pretty big number. And I wanted to break it down a little bit. The actual total budget for 2023 is around $540,000, I believe. And so that includes not only pledge income, but also income from rentals and fundraising like our auction and our pumpkin sales and other things throughout the year, as well as collections on Sunday mornings that aren't designated towards pledges. Staff compensation is about 65% of that total budget number, which is about average for a church our size, somewhere between 60 and 70%. Mortgage payments are about 12% of that total. We did refinance this year at a much better interest rate than we had been paying before for our mortgage, which has helped us considerably. Utilities and facilities-related expenses are around 10%. Denominational obligations are 4%, and most of the rest of the remaining 9% is religious education and worship-related expenses. We get by pretty cheap for religious education and our worship services, I just have to say. So that's the total, and like I said, we're getting close to halfway there. We're about halfway through the process. So for everyone who can, please get your pledge turned in. For everyone who already has, thank you. You'll see a banner out in our fellowship hall that is tracking our total and our progress toward the goal. And near that banner, after the service, you will see Bethany Thornton, our membership director, who can help you if you need some assistance in making your pledge online. Thank you so much. Right now, I have some joys and sorrows to share that were submitted by members of our congregation. After each joy or sorrow that I read, please respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." A joy from Joe Shaughnessy. Joe says, "My unofficially unadopted son, Angelo Madison Jr. and Kate DiCiccio were married Wednesday night. My daughter Sydney was the best person for the ceremony, and their dogs walked with them down the aisle as well. Wishing them the very best. To Joe and family, we hold you in our hearts." Randy Green submitted a sorrow. Randy says, "I have a friend with a son that is suffering from borderline personality disorder and is starting to exhibit violent outbursts to family. It's tearing the family apart, and they have asked for as many prayers as I can muster. There have been some assaults on the father, and he can't find help. To Randy's friends and family, we hold you in our hearts. A joy from Frank Quinn and Sarah Yord. Frank and Sarah write, Friday, Reverend Jim helped us celebrate the marriage of our daughter, Emma Yord, to Alexander Devlishauer Mir here at Sunnyhill. It was a true celebration of love, family, and community. Thank you to Reverend Jim, the facilities team, and everyone else who was involved with helping with logistics. To Sarah, Frank, Emma, Alexander, and everyone who was involved, we hold you in our hearts. Please join me in the spirit of prayer meditation. Each time we gather, we bring with us so much joy, so much sorrow, so much happiness, so much worry, such deep disappointment, such soaring hopes, and brave yearnings. We can never fully know what those around us carry in their hearts, whether heavy or light. We can never fully express what we ourselves bring with us in celebration or in suffering. We can never quite fully articulate what it is that we want for our wondrous, wounded world. So we simply sit with our growing awareness, hold together that which cannot be held alone. Laugh, cry, cajole, encourage, comfort, convey through our presence what cannot be said. We pause now for a moment of shared silence as we hold all of this and more. May we face this day and all of our days with the warmth of our closeness, with the clarity of our highest aspirations, with the wisdom of what our bodies already know and our minds long to find out. Together, we are strong. Together, we are enough. Together, we are. Amen. As the choir comes forward, I'd like to introduce this song, which was written by Mark Miller. His text for this piece, according to the notes on the sheet music, was found etched on the wall of a cellar in Cologne, Germany, written by a Jew hiding there from Nazi persecution during World War II. The text reads as follows: I believe in the sun even when it's not shining. I believe in love even when I don't feel it. I believe in God even when God is silent.
I believe in the sun.
I want to acknowledge our soldiers. I was so thankful and a grateful friend.
Second.
What a wonderful thing to have this choir with us today. The fact that this week's elections are over at long last has brought a sigh of relief for many of us, I think I can say, at least for a couple of reasons. For one, some of the extremist candidates here in Pennsylvania who were running on explicitly Christian nationalist or fear and hate-mongering platforms were defeated. It's important for us sometimes to remember that grassroots organizing really does work. And we have to start from the lowest level up. And that is the way that we build something lasting, something good, something life-giving and life-affirming. And I hope that we do not forget that. Another reason, honestly, for the feeling of relief is that those awful TV ads from all sides have finally stopped airing, at least for now, and we're no longer receiving this seemingly endless stream of political solicitations via robocalls and email and text messages and thousands upon thousands of pieces of mail. But despite the sense of relief that many of us are feeling, we also know that there still are some pretty big challenges before us. There are still some scary people who won political races and are in positions of influence and authority around the country at the local, state, and national levels. And there are, of course, a few electoral races that remain undecided and may not be decided for a little while yet. In challenging times, faith communities like ours become especially important, both as places of refuge or sanctuary, and as places where we can build and sustain resistance to the still ascendant forces of oppression and narrow self-interest. Every one of us needs sanctuary in the sense of a place of refuge at one time or another in our lives, a place where we can feel, if not completely safe, then at least more safe than we do elsewhere. It is especially true for people who are members of oppressed groups, including people of color, immigrants, religious minorities, LGBTQ plus people, women, and others. Everyone who feels threatened and at risk needs a place of refuge. Everyone needs shelter from the storm that we often face. But mere refuge, I think, is not enough if we are to be true to our religious heritage of engagement and activism. We must also function as centers of resistance and embrace another sense of that word, sanctuary. This other sense of sanctuary as a place of resistance to the dominant culture, grows out of that first sense of sanctuary as a place of respite and refuge. Once we have found a place that feels safe, where we can feel what we are feeling and where we can be who we most authentically are, then we can begin to create a sanctuary of resistance, a place where we are not just hiding from the violence and oppression that is around in the dominant culture, but where we are actively resisting it and working to undo it. Some of you will recall that during the Vietnam War, many UU sanctuaries opened their doors to draft resistors who refused to serve as soldiers in what they considered an unjust and immoral war. For those churches, this decision was not an easy one, and it was a divisive matter in some congregations, but most recognized the right of the right of individual conscience was an important part of our tradition which needed to be honored, and so they became places of active resistance to the war and a place of refuge for draft resistors. While it is vital to have a place of refuge where we can grieve together, where we can find shelter among one another from the winds of oppression, a place where we can actively resist the immoral and dangerous forces that now seem dominant, it is absolutely crucial that we find the strength to build something new right where we are. In other words, at some point we have to become a sanctuary, as I said, of grassroots activism, a place where we find strength in action, starting from the bottom up. Building the world we dream about requires us to resist the status quo of greed and oppression. But in order to become places of social and political resistance, we must somehow let go of our personal resistance to taking risks. In other words, there are at least two differing conceptions of this word resistance. Political resistance requires us to be vigilant and active, never accepting things as they are if things as they are unjust and corrupt. Political resistance requires us to resist normalizing classist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, misogynistic views and behaviors. Political resistance requires us to speak up in opposition to such views and behaviors, to actively work to expose them and dismantle them. Personal resistance, on the other hand, is something that we need to let go, especially if our resistance is actually keeping us from living full and healthy lives, if it is bogging us down and limiting our vision and our ability to imagine something more, something different from our very limited, everyday personal experience. But there is an important relationship between these two kinds of resistance: political resistance to moral outrages and personal resistance to letting go of control and fully experiencing life just as it is. The relationship between the two is this: the moral clarity that is necessary to be effective in our political resistance efforts depends on our ability to practice creative, personal non-resistance. Let me unpack that statement a little bit more, because I know it might seem paradoxical or counterintuitive. We tend not to get involved in situations if we do not believe that we have a chance of controlling the outcome. If we see clear social injustices all around, but we cannot see a clear, definitive solution we tend not to act. As a result, we feel stuck, we feel overwhelmed, and we end up doing little or nothing. It sounds familiar, right? In today's world, it's pretty easy to identify clear injustices. They're screaming at us from our TV and computer screens and phones and from our newspapers. And we want to resist these clear injustices, to resist any sort of status quo that supports the perpetuation of these injustices. The solutions to our current problems are not always as clear. And the way forward is not necessarily as easy to see as the obstacles are. But in order to be effective political resistors, we need to learn how to let go of our personal resistance to ambiguity and uncertainty. One of my seminary professors, social ethicist Sharon Welch, wrote, "We are well aware of the costs of systems of injustice, but find it impossible to act against them because no definitive solutions are in sight." That's the liberal or progressive conundrum. When we are unable to see definitive solutions, we tend to shut down, even though we recognize that the systems of injustice are gaining power. We must learn how to move forward, how to take the next step without necessarily knowing where that next step will land. The liberal tendency, and as a liberal, I'm confessing this is my tendency as well, is to think and think and think, to come up with a learned and thorough analysis of any given situation before we act. But that tendency sometimes paralyzes us and keeps us from being effective in addressing the very real evils and injustices in our world. We sometimes act as if we need clear guarantees of success before we're willing to act at all. But that tendency does not serve us well, and we need to learn how to be willing to let go of certainty and embrace, or at least accept, ambiguity and uncertainty. In many ways, we reach the promised land when we recognize that there is no promised land as we may have imagined it. When we recognize instead that the real promised land is found when we take that next step forward into the unknown, when we let go of our ethic of control and move toward an ethic of risk. One of the most dramatic and exciting stories from the Bible comes from the book of Exodus and occurs when the Israelites escape from Pharaoh's cruel slavery after the terror of the 10 plagues. They take off in a hurry, fleeing into the desert, not even allowing time for their bread to rise. And they make it as far as the banks of the Red Sea, where they set up camp. And just about that time, Pharaoh changes his mind about letting them go. He decides to pursue the Israelites into the desert and to slaughter them. And so his charioteers come racing across the desert toward the Red Sea and the Israelites, and they find themselves in this impossible situation with the impassable Red Sea on one side and Pharaoh's armies quickly approaching on the other side. They cry out, the Israelites do, to Moses bitterly. And Moses raises his eyes to God in prayer. But God admonishes Moses, this is not a time for prayer. Command the Israelites to move forward. Lift up your staff and hold out your arm over the sea and split it so that the Israelites can go forth on dry land. And according to the Torah, according to the book of Exodus, that's exactly what happens in the story. And the people crossed into safety. And then when Pharaoh's army pursued them, the sea closed again, drowning them all. Thus were the Israelites freed once and for all from the cruelty of Pharaoh. It's a familiar story. It's one of the greatest redemption stories of all time. But the rabbis of a later generation read that story more critically. They were disturbed that in that story as it's written, God does all of the work, while the Israelites passively watch the spectacle. God sends Moses and tells him what to say. God brings the plagues and hardens the Pharaoh's heart. God brings the Israelites out of Egypt and saves them at the Red Sea. Where are the Israelites themselves in this story? What is the human role of bringing about redemption? To answer those questions, the rabbis, as they often did, inserted a different story in between the lines of the original story. According to the rabbis' retelling, Moses leads the people to the banks of the Red Sea, and they hear the hoofbeats of Pharaoh's army approaching, and the people cry out to Moses. Moses prays to God. God says it's not time for prayer. Hold out your staff and your hand. And he does exactly all of that, just as he was told to do. But nothing happens. The sea remains just as it was before. He tries again, lifting the staff, reaching out his hand, and still the sea does not part. Moses starts getting nervous, and the people start getting nervous too. Panic starts to set in, and everyone is frozen in fear. No one knows what to do. No one, except in this story, one person. His name was Nachshon, the son of Aminadab, one of the princes of the tribes of Israel. Nachshon understood that God was waiting. God had sent Moses, and God had brought the plagues, and God had led the Israelites out of Egypt, but now God was waiting for the people to take a role in their own redemption. God, Nachshon understood, would not part the sea until someone moved. Until someone moved toward their own redemption, until someone was ready to risk their comfort and their safety and maybe even their own life to bring about salvation. And so Nachshon started wading into the Red Sea. He went in at first just ankle deep, and his friends and family wondered what in the world he was doing. And he went a little further until the water was up to his knees, and then his family got a little scared for him. They called back to him, "Come back, it's not safe." But he went further still until the water was up to his waist, and people started just staring at him in silence and awe. He walked even further until the water came up to his shoulders. And only when the water had covered his mouth and his nose did the Red Sea split, and the Israelites were able to cross safely to the other side. That's a hard ask to take that kind of a risk. Most of us aren't called upon to do quite that much, but I would suggest to you that all of us are called to give up something, to risk something, to do something to bring about the world that we dream about, that we want to bring into being. I hope and pray that as we go about the work of creating refuge and resisting the injustices of our current era, we will do so by letting go of our personal resistance to risk and uncertainty, for it is only in taking these first steps into the unknown that we might be able to transform both ourselves and our world. May it be so. Amen.
Please rise in body and or spirit to sing the fire of commitment. If you got a teal hymnal, it's number 1028. If not, and even if you do, words are all up on the screen.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living brings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Thank you. You can be seated. All right, come on up, choir.
It is time for our morning offering. We don't have a designated offering this morning, so our collection will benefit Sunnyhill and will help defray our operating expenses. If you'd like to make a gift via our online giving system, you can do so by going to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says Online Giving, and then follow the instructions. Or you can give by text at 412-324-3130. Text the amount of your gift and the word pledge if you want your payment to apply to your 2022 Sunnyhill. X will go toward our general operating fund. You can also, if you prefer, our mailing address on our website. Yep. Ooh, sorry, everybody. Ha! If you prefer to mail a check, you can find our mailing address on our website, sunnyhill.org. For those of you who are here with us in person, we'll be passing our offering baskets in just a moment. Once again, please welcome the UU Pittsburgh Community Choir, this time led by Derek Tynes, but that's not right at all. Chris is, yep, welcome everybody.
Yeah, really quick before I pass the mic, I want to again acknowledge what a joy it's been singing with this choir and working with these amazing musicians and with the incredible talents of Chris Rust and Derek Tynes over here. And now I'm going to pass the mic. Reverend Derek Tynes is going to be leading us in the next couple of songs, and I want to set you up for the lovely experience you're going to have with Ms. Morgan Hawkins here.
All right, get ready to clap and sing and stamp and pat your foot, all right?
Thank you, Lord, for all you
All right, so I need you to stand. I need you to stand. It's time for you to join the choir, and we need you to join in with us. Everybody, this little light of mine, everybody say it. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it. Everybody say this little. Come on, clap your hands. Let it shine. Yeah. Oh, everywhere I go, what you gonna do with it? Oh, everywhere I go, oh yeah. Everybody say, everywhere I go, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, all over Pittsburgh, I'm gonna. Everybody say, all over Pittsburgh. Oh yeah, all over Pittsburgh. Let it shine. Yeah, it's mighty good. Oh, all in my neighborhood. I'm gonna. Oh yeah, all in my neighborhood. Come on, everybody. All in my neighborhood. Let it shine. One more time. Oh, this little light of mine. What you gonna do with it? I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine. I'm gonna. Oh yeah, this little light. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Oh, he got the whole world. He got the whole world. He got the whole world. He got the whole world in his hand. Oh, he got you and me, brother. You and me, sister. He got black and white together. He got the whole world in his hand. Yeah, he got the whole world. He got the whole world. He got the whole world. He got the whole world in his hand. He got whole world. He got the whole world. Got the whole world. Got the whole world in his. Everybody say. Everybody say. Everybody say. Come on, all the ladies sing. All the ladies sing. All the ladies sing. Come on, all the masculine sing. All the brothers sing. All the men sing. Everybody say. Clap your hands and say. Come on, lift them up high and say. Everybody say. Everybody say. Everybody say. Amen. Amen. Yeah. Yeah. God bless you. Yeah. Yeah. Here you go.
Please join me in saying a word for
Thank you.
extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but
Not the light of truth,
the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I want to thank the Reverend Derek Tynes for taking us to church today. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. As we enter another week of uncertainty in our world, let us remember that there is only one side, that of humanity and the planet Earth. May we work for peace. May we raise our voices with our elected officials and engage as we can in acts of resistance. And may we remember to take very good care of ourselves and those whom we love. May we remember these words adapted from the Unity Prayer: the light of love surrounds us. Love enfolds us. The power of love protects us. Love watches over us wherever we are. Love is. Go in peace, seeking justice and embodying love. Amen.